Hello and welcome to this edition of Voices of Cricket. I am Anand. You're watching Anand on Cricket. And today we have with us someone very special joining us all the way from Sydney in Australia. This is Peter Lalor. He's main cricket reporter for the Australian newspaper. He's also, interestingly, the beer editor of that newspaper, a designation not too many people in the world can claim to hold. He's travelled to India many times. He's been here covering cricket, and even before that, he's lived in India for a significant period of time, part near Dharamsala and then on a beach in northern Karnataka. He's no stranger to most people in Indian cricket circles, and he's here to share with us his experiences. Thank you so much for joining us, Peter. Peter, I usually begin this show by asking my journalist friends who are guests what they would be if they weren't cricket writers. But in your case, you came to it quite late, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I think I came to cricket writing 20 years ago, and I'd already been a journalist for too long to mention. Yeah. So I guess I would have been a journalist or dead. I can't imagine doing anything else than writing about cricket, Anand.
And what was it about cricket that actually brought you to? Did cricket bring you to journalism, or did journalism bring you to cricket?
Journalism brought me to cricket, so I had no desire at all to be a cricket writer. I'd never considered it. Excuse me for a second. Do you want me to start again?
No, just go.
Um, I had no desire at all to be a cricket writer. I'd never considered it, but I joined the staff of the Australian about 20 years ago to be a feature writer and news reporter. Uh, when they just said, "Oh, can you go and sit in the sports section?" I said, "Well, I can't sit in the sports section. Sports journalists are specialists. It's something you do your apprenticeship at." They said, "Oh, it won't hurt. You can go and write features in sport for a while." I thought, "Oh, well, why not? You never say no." Um, and then the next thing they said was, "How do you think about going to India for the 2004 Border Gavaskar Trophy?" And I was delighted because, like, like most Australians, I think still most Australians, I loved cricket, and coincidentally, I loved India because I'd spent, quite a slab of my early life in India, wandering around aimlessly with my eyes open and my mouth open.
I remember meeting you during that 2004 series, which was quite interesting. But let's not get
I
into
yelled
that.
at you, didn't I?
Well, that's how most people meet me the first time they do. So that's not a big deal.
It
I,
was 2 in the morning. You were talking very loudly outside my door.
I think it was about 7 in the evening, and maybe it might have been 2 in the morning Australia time, but in Indian Standard Time, it was certainly early.
Yeah,
But
sorry about that.
But that apart, you did mention your early time in India, and not too many people have that kind of experience of actually, spending time in India um, by choice rather than being sent there by work or something like that. So, uh, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Oh, look, I mean, I'm a curious person. Other cultures fascinate me. Other countries fascinate me. Other people fascinate me. I was young. I was a bit restless. I had some time on my hands. Um, I was following some girl around the world, and she said, "Let's go to Kathmandu and let's go to India." So a bit like cricket writing, I just fell into it. And I remember the very first morning, the first place I went to in India was Benares. I caught the bus from Kathmandu. This would have been before you were born, Anand. And I remember walking down the street of Benares and feeling like my feet had not weren't touching the ground. I was just so alive by this, so excited by this place, and continue to be so to this day. I still find India endlessly fascinating.
And you spent some time in Dharamsala. You spent some time in Karnataka as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I was in Dharamsala before the cricket ground was there. Yeah, we used to live up on the side of the mountain in sort of where else did you say? And in Karnataka. Yeah, we used to live on the beach in Karnataka during the winter and then move up to the mountains during the summer and take advantage of the view from up there back down onto the plains. It's pretty special actually to go back to Dharamsala and see cricket there because it was a place very close to my heart. I used to stay in a little village up on the way up to Triund. It's called Bagsunat. A lot of Indians would know that now, don't they? Particularly if you live in the Punjab, it's a kind of popular holiday destination. I think it's got hotels and everything now. A little bit like the beach I used to sleep on. I think it's got a resort now. Yeah. Back in those days, it was just a couple of hippies and palm trees and farmers.
Yeah,
Fishermen.
the last time Australia played in Dharamsala, if I remember right, you took you were pretty much like the tour guide taking some of the Australian journalists up the mountain.
Yeah, yeah. I I love taking people around India because I get so excited by it, and I want to, and I want to share with people what I see. Um, yeah, I took the boys on a bit of a wild walk up the mountains. I decided not to do it the easy way. I'd always heard about this other route up the mountain. It proved considerably more difficult than anyone bargained for, but we got there and it was worth it. In fact, I think it was one of the highlights of our cricket tour to India. In fact, a lot of the boys say that.
But it's not just up the mountains that you're guiding the troops, because when you come to India, you've been to India a fair few times now, covering cricket, and you've been, well, honest, blunt, critical of various things that the BCCI does, and that earns you your fair share of criticism and anger on social media, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I understand that. I think people are passionate about their cricket. People are passionate about their country, and how dare a foreigner criticize somebody else's cricket or country? I get it that it annoys people. If the shoe was on the other foot, it might annoy me. Maybe not to the same level of passion as you get from some of those people on social media, but it kind of comes with the job. And I think it comes with the job that you have to be, brave. And if you see something, call it out, whether it's your place too or not.
And you equally call these things out in your country as well, don't you? And you cop it for
Yeah,
that as well.
I would hope so, Anand. I think a lot of us don't recognise the hypocrisy in ourselves, but I would like to think that I'm as equally as critical of Australian cricket administration and Australian cricket, Australian government, Australia, as I have been. In fact, more so. But I don't know. That's for others to judge, and apparently I fail. I'm good.
Aside from your time as cricket writer, you're also beer editor of the Australia.
Mm.
A lot of Indian viewers won't even understand what that is. Like, what is a beer editor? We have about we have three and a half homegrown lagers and not much to judge. So things are changing.
Yeah, yeah. I think I have my role as beer editor of the Australian is somewhat overblown because I don't do much anymore. But before I became a cricket writer, I was asked to write beer columns for one of the daily newspapers here. Didn't know much about beer, but it was when the craft beer scene was emerging. So I started doing it with a passion, and what 20 the a couple of decades later, the craft beer industry in Australia has peaked. It's incredible. I mean, if you walk around, you can go from in walking distance of my house. Sorry, I'm not very articulate today. And Anand, you're the first person I've spoken to. My family's not talking to me at the moment. If you go for a wander around my place, there are between 13 and 16 craft breweries within walking distance. You've got some in Bangalore. I've been to them. They're quite good.
Yes, things are certainly changing here, but it's going to be a while yet before somebody gets a
I
point
noticed that
where
wheat beers are really popular in India. I kind of get it too. I loved wheat beers. I went through a wheat beer fad years ago, and it comes back occasionally. But gee, it seems everywhere you go in India, someone's drinking a sort of cloudy wheat beer. It's a nice drop in those conditions.
I suppose we've been given the weather in most parts for the best part of the year. People want a beer as cold as possible and as bubbly as possible. In these,
Yeah, that that's one of the great changes I've noticed in India. When I used to travel around the day, I didn't even bother drinking beer because you could not get a cold one. And it was pretty difficult to get a good one too.
so what have you noticed about India that has changed in your trips? I mean, your most recent one, you spent more, like, a little more than 2 months here over 5 test matches. It's quite an exciting series. You got to ride a chariot in Ahmedabad.
Oh, look, India, you know the answer to this question in some ways, don't you? It's almost as if there has been a revolution in India in the 30 years that I've been traveling to there. It was the old Nehruvian sort of semi-socialist India that I first encountered. I think you had one, maybe two television channels. That was Doordarshan. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. You had the ambassador car, you had the Enfield motorcycle, you didn't have Coca-Cola. Pizzas were an exotic dish. No one had ever heard of a hamburger. Those things didn't bother me in those days. I was a vegetarian. But also, your cricket, while strong and proud, wasn't as developed as it could have been. And there's one thing that I always considered when I looked at Indian cricket. I thought, if India can ever harness the talent on the subcontinent properly, it's almost going to be an unchallengeable force in world cricket, just by virtue of both the passion for the game and the population. I mean, you should be able to field 20 sides as good as Australia. That's come of late. I didn't foresee the sort of the economic rise of Indian cricket and the fact that it would almost become, well, maybe I did see this, it would become the capital of world cricket. It is now cricket's Rome. That perhaps once was England, and I think they probably still think it is over there. But we Australians were a bit off them after what happened at Lord's last time we were there. The MCC in particular. It's fantastic. And I've also seen a newfound confidence in and the cricket reflects country. I think it was embodied, there was a progression of captains that led up to him. Nobody, no one event or one person is a revolution. You can trace these things way back to Sonny and those sorts of guys. But Dhoni and then Virat Kohli, the confidence and the swagger and the undisputed talent that they brought to cricket, it reflects what's going on in the country. I mean, the country has a swagger about it now, a confidence about it now. Well, you don't always notice that sometimes when you make critical observations, because I think, there's a few thin-skinned people around, but if you took a deep breath and looked around yourself, I don't think, you got it. What am I going to say? India has every right to be proud and confident and assertive, and almost to dismiss its critics.
I'm glad you brought up Kohli because I was going to ask you about him next. You've been something of an admirer of his over the years. I mean, not just the way he plays, but the way he conducts himself, the way he speaks. You've interviewed him. What is it about Kohli that kind of strikes a chord with Australians in particular?
Um, I think we first saw when he made his first tour here, and you'd remember the date better than me, and made an obscene gesture to the crowd. I think it was in Sydney, wasn't it? Hell, where's this kid come from? That's something that's something Australians can respect in a strange way. We liked the guy, and then the way he led that team, the way he batted, the way he stuck his chest and chin out. You had to forgive him a few times when the red mist descended, and maybe he went a little too far, which isn't to say any other. And at times he would, some of his actions might have been indefensible, but how could you not love a guy who asks a braying crowd to show some respect for Stephen Smith? How can you not love a guy who plays cricket the way he plays cricket? The fact that he bats so beautifully, and particularly in Australian conditions, we see the best of him down here. You can't help but admire Virat Kohli.
And Virat Kohli's long-time partner in crime is also a good friend of yours, Ravi Shastri. How did that go out, and what's that been like over the years?
I think the first time I spoke, well, obviously I watched Ravi make all those runs against Shane Warne at the SCG years ago when Shane made his debut. And what did he take? One for 150, 151?
One for 206.
Oh, was it? Maybe that's okay. Maybe that's when he got his first wicket at 150, and it was Shastri. But Shastri had made the double century. We first made contact, during another unhappy time in Australian Indian cricket relations, was during the sort of emergence of that awful tawdry Monkeygate business. I remember I wanted to speak to somebody, I was asked by my editor to speak to somebody in India about this, and Malcolm Conn, who was the chief cricket writer at the Australian at the time, said, "Ring Ravi." Oh God, Ravi's not going to want to talk to me. But Ravi spoke to me, and I thought from there on we kind of hit it off. I remember him saying to me, "Lawler, I hate what you write, but I love the way you write it." And I don't know, there's just something that I really respect about Ravi, and for some reason we just get on like a house on fire. Don't know why.
So he's going to be a bit disappointed that you're not going to be in India for this World Cup.
Ravi doesn't need me. He's got friends wherever he goes in life. He's an extraordinary human being. I don't think people kind of get the depths of Ravi. I mean, obviously, people love his commentary and hear him through his commentary and see that cricket personality. But I see him out and about and with people. He just has a way with people that is pretty rare among people of his stature in the game. His ability to talk with anybody and to take a genuine interest with anybody, and wherever you go in the world with Ravi, if it's in England, if it's here in Australia, if it's in India, there is this assortment of people that he's collected. They're all from different walks of life, and they all show up, and they all love Ravi, and Ravi loves them. And it's just a kind of unique part of his personality, particularly when you sort of think of the way, most sort of people of that stature have to sort of shut themselves off so they can have a bit of peace and quiet. Ravi seems to invite everybody into the tent.
Just before I let you go, I have to talk about this World Cup a little bit. Are you going to be watching it at all?
Will I be watching the World Cup?
Is Australia watching the World Cup?
Yeah, Australia will probably be watching. Australians watch the Australian games. The diehards will be watching it. It can get a bit difficult, those sort of the second half of games, given the time zone over here. But no, I'll be tuning in for sure from a distance. It's an absolute luxury to watch cricket on the television. It's like what I used to do before I was a cricket journalist, to lie on the couch and watch cricket about 10 meters from your fridge. That's living, Anand.
And this looks like it might be one of the last 50 over World Cups, in the sense that T20 is just taking so much more interest. And while there is a strong push for India, Australia, and England to play each other in Test cricket, there's not a lot of other Test cricket happening either, which kind of suggests that the 50-over game might be on the way out. Do you think will you miss it when 50-over cricket is gone?
Oh, not particularly. If I had to choose between T20 cricket and ODI cricket, I'd choose ODI cricket. But I made a decision a long time ago that sort of Test cricket, it was the game that I've always loved, even when I was a kid. And it's the game that I generally report on. I rarely report on one-day cricket. I'll take, like everybody else these days, I take interest around World Cups and things like that. No, I won't miss it. I mean, change is coming at us really fast in cricket, isn't it? And I worry about what shapes it will take, but I also watch with fascination as to what's going to happen in the next few years and whether that sort of loyalty to country will be overcome by loyalty to club. It seems at hand that moment, doesn't it, Anand? Where, hey, Indian franchises will be signing up Australian players and occasionally releasing them for national duties. I don't think it's that far off. I think Australia will be able to hold that moment at bay longer than than a lot of countries, not most countries, because we're still able to pay our players very well, and still take quite a practical approach to letting them go off and do what they want in their time off, and not even in their time off. But it's coming, and it's going to be interesting.
Thank you very much, Peter, for having this chat with us and sparing the time. We should be over for the World Cup.
Yeah, you could take me to some of those craft beer bars in Bangalore. You got any new ones?
As long as you don't write any scathing reviews about them, because they may not be your cup of tea, in a manner of speaking.